All right, Chair Kwan, it looks like we have a quorum.
Can someone from staff tell me whether or not Madonna Cruz has responded that she'll be joining us today?
I have not heard of anything, but I will do some research and get back to you on that.
I'd appreciate that. It's 4:02. We do have a quorum. So I'm going to say welcome. It's July 28th, 2021. It seems like we've been doing this forever. And I would like to introduce myself. My name is Carol Quant. I'm currently the chair of the Board of Community Services. With us today is Vice Chair Terry Griffin and board members Pamela Van Halsema, Steve Spellman, Carolina Spence, and Logan Pitts. Also joining us today are our hosts, Mary Lou Nichols, and helping with technical support is Elisa Rawson. Did I say your name correctly?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
You're very welcome. At this point, I need to remind panelists and presenters that we would appreciate if you silence your cell phones and keep your microphones on mute if you're not speaking. For the members of the public who may be joining this meeting, you will have your webcams off and microphones muted. If you're phoning in to join the meeting and you choose to speak during public comments later in this meeting, for privacy concerns, the host will rename you to caller and only show the last 4 digits of your phone number. Additionally, please remember the City of Santa Rosa is committed to providing a safe and inclusive environment, free from disruption, and will not tolerate hateful speech or actions. Everyone is expected to participate respectfully, or if necessary, the meeting will end immediately. Madam Host, would you like to explain how public comments will be heard at today's meeting?
Yes, thank you, Chair Quant. At each agenda item, the item will be presented. The chair will ask for board comments or questions, and then at the appropriate time, open the floor for public comments. The host will lower all hands until the public comments item is open. Once the chair has called for public comment, the chair will ask the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on the specific agenda item. Those joining by phone may dial *9 to raise their hands. The host will then call on those who have raised their hands. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and a courtesy timer will appear on the screen.
Thank you. And with that, I call this July 28, 2021 meeting of the Board of Community Services to order at 4:04 in the afternoon. Due to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Orders N2520 and N2920, which suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act, and the order of the Health Officer of the County of Sonoma to shelter in place to minimize the spread of COVID-19, the Board of Community Services members will be conducting today's meeting, alas, in a virtual setting using Zoom. Board members and staff are participating from remote locations and/or practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting as noted on the city's website and is noted on the agenda. And with that, may I have a roll call?
Yes, and before I do roll call, to answer your question, Madonna Cruz did not respond, our SVP, to the meeting today. So now I'll call roll. Please respond when I call your name. Chair Quant.
Here.
Vice Chair Griffin.
Here.
Board Member Spillman.
Here.
Board Member Pitts.
Yes.
Board Member Cruz. Board Member Spence.
Here.
Board Member Van Halsema.
Here.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that all board members are present with the exception of Madonna Cruz.
Thank you. And with that, I would also like to give a shout out to somebody who's joining us today. His name is Jeff Tibbetts. He's a very familiar face and a man of many hats. And adding to his hats, he has a new position. I will let him fill us in on that. But before any of that happens, I would like to note that Kelly Magnuson has retired from the rec department. She was with us for a number of years. Very sorry to see her go because she was such a great head or subhead of the recreation department. But filling her very capable shoes is someone who's going to do a great job. So congratulations, Jeff. Welcome to your new role as Interim Deputy Director of Recreational Services. And now we're going to open the floor for public comments on non-agenda items. At this point, anyone who wishes to address the board on matters not listed on the agenda but are under our jurisdiction may do so. Do we have any public comments for this item?
Yes, we have two questions. The first caller is Richard. Richard, I've enabled your speaking permissions. Please state your full name for the record if you so choose and state your question or comment.
Hello, my name is Richard Bell. I'm a resident of Santa Rosa, and I'm here on behalf of petanque players in Santa Rosa who would like to build courts in the park. May I just go on?
Yes, please. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So petanque is a sport, something like bocce or lawn bowling. It's a French game that was kind of got its name and its beginning in France in 1907, when a bunch of villagers altered the rules of their games in order to accommodate a man who had rheumatism. So one of the rules they put into the game was that when players were tossing their balls, they had to stand with their feet inside a little ring in the ground. So petanque means feet planted. Currently, petanque is a game that's being played in 160 countries. There are national and international federations and world championships. It's not very well known here in this country, but we do have our own Federation Petanque USA, and it oversees leagues and gameplay from coast to coast. And here around Northern California, we have courts and clubs to play the game in Sonoma, San Rafael, San Francisco, Petaluma, and many others. But we don't, for those of us here who want to play the game, we have to travel to another city. So what we're asking is consideration for about a half acre of ground in a park in Santa Rosa to build 20 courts. That would let us form a club, host games and tournaments, and invite players from other areas to come here and play our game. The cost of courts is almost dirt cheap since they're built of gravel and sand. And maintenance costs for a half acre in the city, for this half acre in the city, would probably actually go down, first because maintenance on gravel doesn't require much water or anything else. And second, because our club, like all the other clubs around, would take over maintenance, repairs, and updates. I'm not sure if I've lost contact, but I'll finish anyway. One other thing that I wanted to say, one other thing to think about with petanque is that most of the sports facilities in the parks are made for young, fit people. Petanque's different. In 20 courts, we could have 120 players at a time from ages below 10 to over 90 of all levels of physical fitness getting together outdoors in our parks to play games. If you want more information, there are hundreds of YouTube videos of the game, or you can go to the FPUSA website, or you can come to Sonoma anytime, any afternoon after 3 p.m. and see a game. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have one moment. We have our next speaker, Ken Kirst. Ken, I've enabled your speaking permissions. Please state your full name for the record if you so choose and offer your question or comment.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ken Hurst. I asked for time tonight because I would like to address the situation of pickleball crowding in Santa Rosa. Every weekday, you may have 24 people playing and as many as 10 to 15 people waiting to play either on the 6 courts at Finley or the 4 courts at Howarth Park. I know there have been many discussions about Measure M and how it might be used to create more pickleball space. These solutions involve construction of courts financed by public funds and therefore by necessity require long-term planning and approval processes. To address the immediate need for additional space, I'd like to... Can you hear me? Hello?
You were breaking up for a moment. Try it again.
Oh, okay. To address the immediate need for additional space for pickleball, I'd like to propose the conversion of 2 or 3 tennis courts at Howarth Park to permanent pickleball courts, financed by the pickleball community. I'm the treasurer of the Sonoma County Pickleball Club Limited, a 501c3 nonprofit whose sole purpose is the construction of pickleball courts for the public use. Howarth Park has 5 tennis courts. If the city would agree to convert 2 or 3 Howarth tennis courts to pickleball courts, leaving the remaining tennis courts for tennis, I feel certain that pickleball players would and could raise the funds to pay for the conversion. Members of our nonprofit spearheaded the fundraising for the conversion of Court 3 at Finley to 4 pickleball courts and the subsequent conversion of Court 4 at Finley to a multi-use court for tennis and pickleball. Currently, we are raising funds to augment the town of Windsor's construction costs for 4 courts at Hiram Lewis Park, and thus far have raised over $10,000. Converting 2 to 3 tennis courts at Howarth would allow 24 to 32 more people to play pickleball and still allow for 4 to 12 people to play tennis. I feel that the money could be raised quickly because the level of frustration for lack of playing space is high, and people would be willing to give to solve that problem quickly. I would like to ask the Board of Community Services to schedule an agenda item for further discussion of Howarth Park Courts conversion financed by public donations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any other questions, comments for item 3? Chair Quant, I see no other hands at this time.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, which is the approval of the minutes, which goes all the way back to May 26th of 2021. Hopefully you've had a chance to read them. I was not present at that meeting, so I leave it to all of you to hopefully approve those minutes. Seeing no issues, we'll go ahead and approve. Great. So now we're going to move on to item 5, which is upcoming events and reports of the accomplished events. We all have a PDF handout on that if we want to follow along. And I turn it over to Interim Deputy Director Jeff Tibbetts. Take it away, Jeff.
Thank you. Hopefully I can make it through my first assignment without messing up here. So yeah, you guys have the full record as far as upcoming events. I mean, the big thing for recreation is we're very excited to be releasing the fall winter activity guide. Will be coming out later this week for review with registration beginning August 5th. So excited to be continuing to bring back programs. On that same note, as far as accomplishments, would like to draw attention to some of those reopening efforts and what recreation has done with some programming, as well as issuing permits to the public for things that they're doing. So if you look at park permits, and just since the June 15th date, we kind of waited for that to become official before we started enacting permits based off that. So from June 15th through a couple weeks ago when this was compiled, 62 park permits were issued or in process. And that's everything from smaller events to some of the larger events that are car shows and some of those things that are planning on coming back in September. That does not include picnic reservations, which is hundreds of additional picnic reservations. These are park permits are using grass space or different areas of the park where they go beyond just a normal picnic reservation. So we've definitely found that the community is ready and excited that we've been able to accommodate that, as well as just with our contract instructor programs, which was a little bit slower to come back. Rec has run a lot of programs, the School of Rec program, the summer camps and those things that we run with our own staff, and our internal programs have been running for a while. This was really the big kickback of contract instructor programs this summer, and over 1,300 children registered in our summer camps and classes. So the community was ready for us to reopen. It's really been exciting that we've been able to accomplish that and have a summer where we're talking about kids participating in camps and stuff instead of refunds issued for canceled programs. So obviously a little bit of that momentum has been sapped away here recently with the variant and some of those things. But we look forward to, again, registration opening next week and bringing back more. The other thing that I saw was on the list to draw attention to was the Measure M Parks for All community outreach meeting, holding that in Spanish, being held on June 24th with the park planning team, and the fact that we had 82 participants for that meeting, which is I thought worth making note of for community outreach and the value of holding a meeting Spanish only and getting that many participants. So a lot going on, and excited to continue to grow and reopen at the speed that is safe and that the community is ready for.
Thank you, Jeff. Before we move on to upcoming events or the next section, does anyone have any questions for Jeff, starting with the upcoming events? If you do, raise your hand, and then we'll move on to accomplished events. And Terry, it looks like your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question, Jeff. I noticed the activity guide for fall and winter is not going to be produced in hard copy. Will there be anything that will go out to residents to direct them to a digital copy, be it a utility bill insert or postcard or anything like that?
I don't believe there's anything in the works yet. I know we've had conversations with marketing about different postcards or things that could go out at different times. One of the things that we know might be, as far as why it's not going paper copy, is it's still just, we'll be starting that process for the paper version of the activity guide for spring, summer of 2022. And that process will start in a month, less than a month. So still just too much uncertainty for us to have done that for this guide. But we are looking at ways to use some of that marketing funds to get messaging out other ways. And especially if there's things that we can add and bring back, if you know, we're able to bring back more contract instructors, more programs, more special events, those types of things, then also using that resource to reach out to the community for things that didn't make this original release of the guide, but that we might be able to bring back.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on the upcoming events portion? Pamela.
I just have a really simple question about park permits, and I was on the site and trying to see what the policies are and what kind of permits people can sign up for. And I noticed that you can't sign up for a permit for a neighborhood park in an obvious way. It's community parks. that have them. But do people do that, make a request for a neighborhood park permit? And if so, is that just a case-by-case basis, how that's handled?
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at, we do issue park permits for neighborhood-based neighborhood parks. Something that we've just run into since reopening from COVID, we didn't really have a guideline around it in the past because it hadn't come up, and now we're seeing is that people, large events, generally people try to plan in community parks, not neighborhood parks, but we've had a number of requests, and so we're trying to work with the community to help them understand, if we start bringing concerts and stuff in your neighborhood park, then you might lose your neighborhood park as being a neighborhood park. So this is something new that we're dealing with within park permits and trying to get a grasp of. So it is case by case, and we are trying to look at, historically it was somebody having a birthday party and they wanted to go across the street to their neighborhood park and have their birthday party. And a lot of times people were at the house and at the park, and it has kind of shifted where there's large events. So we are trying to maintain the neighborhood park being not a large gathering spot. They don't have the parking, they don't have the restrooms, they don't have the amenities for really those events, sound permits, those different things that impact the neighborhood a lot more at those parks. So something that we're working on right now, so that yes, it's case by case, but that we have more to fall back on, that it's consistent from case to case.
Any questions from board members on the accomplished events section of Jeff's presentation? So Jeff, I have a question, of course, and that has to do with the Measure M. We have, as a board, asked for more input, and I see that it is again closing very shortly as of the 2nd of August. I know this is more for the park side, but was August 2nd set as a date because that much more input has been gathered, or was it just set as a date because every start date needs a finish date? And is August 2nd it, or is it just a potential guideline for closing?
Yeah, I would have to defer a little bit to Jen, who's not here today, obviously, while I'm filling in her spot. My understanding with it is that they plan to do sessions of them reopening in the future, because this is 10 years, the course of Measure M, and wanting to have continued input throughout that process. But I believe that that's the close that they can compile everything that they've gotten over that month and a half, and get results and have actions that can be taken forward for how to use the funds. And then I believe that the intention is there'll be a number of series throughout the 10 years to address additional outreach to the community. But again, I would defer to Jen Santos for more specifics on some of those details.
Because August 2nd will take place before our next meeting, can we ask Jen to send out an email update to this board, since this is an item that we have all expressed interest in further outreach before it moves to City Council? And what I'm hearing you say is the current year's percentage, and I think we're in year 3 of the 10, the current year's money may move forward soon, but it would be revisited before, say, the 4th year's money is allotted. Is that what I'm hearing?
Again, I don't know the exact specifics of how that'll work, because assuming some of these projects may be bigger than 1 year's funding, and these aren't funds that need to be spent within the fiscal year as general fund or something. So there could be projects similar to the approach was for the first few years, focusing on fire recovery and different things that needed to happen with the city, was multiple years of funding. So I don't know that it's necessarily this process was just year 3 process, because obviously depending on what projects come out of that, could be larger projects that use funding, or it could be less money and then more money will go into the reserves for year 4, year 5, year 6. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any follow-up questions for Jeff on anything? Seeing none, thank you, Jeff, and we will move on to scheduled items. Item 7.1 is a review of day camps and work experience with Ryan Shepherd.
Good afternoon to the board. Hello, everyone out there in computer monitor land. My name is Ryan Shepherd. In the camps communities, I'm known as Mr. Big. This is my 33rd year working for the city of Santa Rosa. I love the job, and today I'm going to talk about some traditional day camp programs and our summer work experience program for teens. First, I'm going to familiarize you with the regular programming aspects of each, and then I will follow up with adjustments that were needed to adapt to COVID. So, and there we are. Next slide, please. I'm going to start with traditional day camps, and in addition to the 3 camps that I'll be talking about today, we also run a Camp Kennedy, a 1-week camp for the differently abled during the summer. I also coordinate a spring camp during spring break and a winter camp during winter break, which usually lasts 2 weeks. Next slide, please. Quick little overview of the 3 camps that we have here is Camp Wa-Tam, which is over in Howarth Park, started in 1958. We're going on 63 years, getting excited for our 75th, only 12 years away. It serves over 1,100 kids each summer. We wanted to create a Howarth Park, a Camp Wa-Tam on the west side, if you will, and that's when we started Camp Uchi in 1996. It's held in Youth Park. It's about half the capacity of Camp Wa-Tam, 440 kids, and they do similar activities, which I will talk about later. And finally, in pretty much in the middle of the city, we have Doyle Adventure Camp, which is held in Doyle Park, and it really focuses on combining a day camp experience with also providing childcare options for parents and also familiarizing the campers, staff, and volunteers with our transportation system in the city of Santa Rosa. Next slide, please. So with Camp Wa-Tam, it really is our crown jewel of our camps in the city of Santa Rosa. We're averaging about 130 campers a session. We usually do 9 to 10 sessions depending on the school calendars. Each week it's employing 19 staff and 40 volunteers who are all putting in 40 hours a week. The camp program is pretty unique in that it has a 1-night overnight. So Monday through Friday, camp starts and goes from 9:30 to 3 p.m. And then on Thursday, the campers arrive at 1 p.m. and they stay overnight until Friday morning at 10. We also have an extended hours option that allows parents to pick their kids up Monday through Wednesday at 5:15 for parents that are unable to meet the other hours. Types of activities you're going to see a lot of traditional camp activities at Camp Wa-Tam. We pride ourselves on the archery and canoeing and roasting s'mores, songs, skits, games, crafts. They will take a Tuesday every week. They go over to Spring Lake and they hike over there and they spend the day swimming in the lagoon or fishing or playing games on the beach. And then another special part of Camp Wa-Tam is we have a parents' night program every Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. And what happens there is the campers all week are working on skits and songs and a little show that we put together. And sometimes even the staff will put some a little production together as well. And then we present that to the parents so that they get a chance to see their kids in action and kind of see what their kids have been doing all week. Next slide, please. Doyle Adventure Camp is our camp that is really teaching kids about how to use public transportation, and we have a ton of fun along the way. The hours are much more designed for working parents. With extended hours, you can go Monday through Friday from 7:45 a.m. to 5 p.m. as late as 5:30 for pickup without any penalties. They're also going to be doing songs, skits, games, and crafts. Once a week, they travel over to Wa-Tam and they use their canoes and use the archery facility. They're going to take city bus to Ridgeway Swim Center twice a week to have a great time there. And like I said, we definitely explain them the rules of the public transportation system, how to use our city bus system, how to be good patrons on the city bus system, et cetera. And we even have some campers that arrive to camp via city bus. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, we also have Camp Uchi over in Youth Park, and it was originally designed to be our Camp Wa-Tam on the west side of town. It's a half capacity of Camp Wa-Tam. but it also has working hours. Camp Uchi originally started with an overnight as well, but with the demand for daycare type options for parents on the west side of town, we kind of altered the schedule and changed it. They also do 2 swims, but they do them at Finley, and they're doing the same type of activities. They'll do a theme related field trip each week, have a theme related special guest. And if I didn't mention before, all 3 camps do run by a theme each week. And you can see on this picture, this is Robin Hood week for us at Camp Uchi. Next slide, please. So for COVID, we really had to rethink how we were doing things to keep our patrons, our campers safe, and our staff and volunteers safe as well. And we have a pretty good name. Our camps programs I feel, are very highly respected in the city. And we wanted to make sure we came at it with a different angle. We didn't want people to think we were changing our original formula. That didn't work so well for Coca-Cola. We didn't want to do it either. So we came up with the Summer Daze branding. And we came up with for 2020, we came up with Summer Daze at Camp Wa-Tam and Summer Daze at Steele, where we did 4 10-hour days. And we came up with this schedule because we surveyed parents, and this was by far the option they wanted, 4 10-hour days. During the last summer in 2020, when we were in full steam in COVID, it was an option that most parents felt like they could find care for one day. And a question I get often is, well, why not just have a 5th day and go 50 hours? And we think that one of the things that makes our camp so special is the bonding that happens between our campers, our staff, and our volunteers. And if we go over 40 hours, which we really can't do, then we're bringing in different staff, and we think we're kind of changing the experience. Some other modifications we made to make our programs work during COVID is we reduced enrollment. Instead of 130 campers, we went to 75. Masks, of course, we altered our activities. We did eliminate Parents' Night because we found it too difficult to get that many parents together and do it safely during COVID times. We instituted stringent cleaning methods. We enforce social distancing, whether the kids put their stuff on their own carpet square or within their own hula hoop. We definitely keep them safe from each other. And in 2021, we didn't run Summer Daze at Steele. We ran Summer Daze at Camp Uchi, and we opened Camp Uchi up, and it's actually having its most successful summer since its beginning in 1996. It was full all summer. There's 1 more week left after this, and it has a wait list for every week. So that's pretty much what we did to alter our camps under COVID. Next slide, please. Some challenges we run into running camps in COVID and non-COVID times is limited support from maintenance as staffing reductions start to impact the services we can request. We definitely found the constantly changing and ambiguous COVID rules to be challenging to interpret them. I mean, daily we would read them and try and figure out exactly what it meant. What could we do? Could we expand services? How can we still keep our campers and staff safe? We did run into some COVID exposures, but I believe because we really followed the rules. We never had a super spreader event, anything like that, but we did have campers say, hey, or parents let us know that their campers came down with something and they would keep them out. We have masking complaints, both complaints that they shouldn't be wearing masks and masking complaints that they should be wearing masks at all times with no breaks. The increased in displaced persons has been increasingly challenging over the last few years, even to a point where we have to send staff around to make sure there are no sharps on the ground, such as discarded needles, etc. And it's pretty disappointing. And then, of course, aging infrastructure are some programming challenges we run into. For example, at Doyle Park, we've got a huge crack through the middle of the clubhouse there that we're worrying about it being a safety hazard, and some other things that are becoming more and more dilapidated with time. Next slide, please. At the end of each season, we do a survey monkey. We like to get the input from the patrons, the people who are attending our camps. And in 2019 was our last regular camp session. And as you can see, at 97%, most all the responses are very encouraging. They're telling other people about our programs to increase enrollment. They're saying they're liking our programs. They think we do a good job selecting our staff. And it seems like we, especially with the wait lists, our programs are appropriately priced. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to dive into work experience, and the summer work experience for teens is a program that we've had for about 35 years. We started out with just a volunteer program, but we thought we would take it to the next level about 25 years ago. Next slide, please. So what is work experience? What we're trying to do is provide experience for teens so that they will be job ready when they leave our program. Most teens spend 2 to 3 years in the program. It is for teens 13 to 17. They do pay a fee, which changes according to the needs of the program. It's slowly been escalating, usually about $5 every year or two. I get about 300 to 350 volunteers every summer who each volunteer anywhere from 60 to 300 hours a summer, and the work experience program is putting up about 30,000 volunteer hours every summer. And it gives a lot of things for kids to do. They're staying out of trouble, they're around positive role models, and you'll see in a moment the process they go through with the application, interview, and job experience. And one of the number one things it does is it beats back the catch-22. And what I mean by that is we have young people trying to get jobs but can't get hired because they don't have experience. But then they can't get experience because they can't get hired because they can't get a job because they don't have experience. And what this program does is it gets them something to put on their application so that they can say, yes, I've done that. Yes, I've attended to a job. Yes, I followed a schedule. Yes, I was evaluated. Yes, I was trained. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, they're going to learn how to fill out an application, and we actually go over what they did well with the applications and what they needed improvement on. They get mentored practice. We talk about what went very well in the interviews and what they could have improved on. They're evaluated weekly and at the end of the summer. And they also get to evaluate our program so that we can learn how to better serve them as volunteers and as customers. Because the work experience program is a unique position where not only are they customers, but they're our employees. So we have a lot of responsibility to them. And one of the great things about it, my other career is I'm a high school teacher, and most schools in the county and in the state, in fact, require community service hours to satisfy your junior high, middle school, or high school graduation. Next slide, please. And we have anywhere from 10 to 13 different areas each summer, and they learn valuable skills in their specific area, which I'll go over in a moment. All those different jobs that we offer do have customer service skills. Many involve learning how to handle money or pool and deck supervision or other aquatics type skills, positive discipline with young kids and campers, practice in planning and making activities. And like I said before, it really looks great on an application. Next slide, please. So who benefits from work experience? And this, I like this angle of work experience. Next slide. And it is a win-win-win situation. Next slide, please. For example, we know the parents are winning because their kids aren't sitting on their couch all day watching TV or in their rooms playing video games or bugging them and telling them they're bored. And I speak the truth when I tell you most volunteers work 2 to 4 weeks and beg for more. The kids are winning because they're having fun, and we know that because they're begging for more. And our programs absolutely win. It allows us to provide a much better product to the public as it increases our supervision. And for example, in camps, if we did not have CITs, we'd have 15 campers with 2 staff. But because we have 4 CITs in every group, we've got 6 staff-like people and 15 campers, and it really allows us to provide a better product for our customers. Next slide, please. So these are the steps in the work experience program. The first step is that they're applying. They're filling out that application. It's front side, back side. They're telling us our preference in the job area they'd like to work. The second step is a group interview, and I also interview my staff in group interviews. We want to see how they interact with each other. We want to see if they're paying attention. We want them to learn from other people being interviewed as well. After their interviews, we use their application and their interview to find a placement for them, and I'll go over the different areas they can be placed, but we have a young gentleman here in the animal barn, and it looks like we have a junior lifeguard there on the right. After they're placed, we have an orientation, and that's where we go over, hey, you guys did this great on your application, but we saw a lot of this on your application. Don't ever do that with an application. Here's what you're going to want to do. We also go over the pros and cons of their interviews and give them tips on how to succeed. After that, the final step before they start working is training. And depending on their placement, they get anywhere from 10 to 30 hours of training in their specific field before they ever work with campers or other customers. Next slide, please. So what kind of programs do we offer in work experience? It does vary year to year, but there are some that we see every year. Next slide, please. Camp Wa-Tam's our most popular. I'll get 110 to 130 CITs every summer, and I actually get about 180 requests. But unfortunately, there is a cap for how many CITs we need and can use productively. So being a CIT or counselor in training is one of our most popular ones. Next slide, please. We do the same at Doyle Adventure Camp, and you can see that's one summer's worth of CITs at Doyle Adventure Camp, and that's about 40 CITs there, and they're gonna have about 16 work a week. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have Camp Uchi, and that looks like the fun CIT and staff photo. I give them a fun one and then a nice serious presenting one. And same thing at Camp Uchi. We got about 30 to 40 CITs, and they're going through the camp process. Next slide, please. We also offer volunteer opportunities in aquatics. One is a swim aid. So when a child goes and takes swim lessons, there is a trained, paid employee who teaches them swim lessons. And each swim instructor will have a swim aid or two helping them with the younger ones, helping the kids master the strokes, etc. Next slide, please. We have junior lifeguard is another volunteer opportunity we have, and they learn effective deck supervision and learn all the ins and outs of being a lifeguard. We do require that they take a junior lifeguard class beforehand. So many of these kids are actually ended up working for us in our lifeguard program. And if I might and just verbally revisit the camps program, every year I have about 45 to 55 camp staff, and every year all but 3 or 4 of them were in our work experience program. I believe 2019, we had 55 staff and 50 were CITs at one point. Next slide, please. We also have LITs or leaders in training with neighborhood services, and they're assisting the kids through all the different activities they do in all our neighborhood service programs, much like a CIT, but instead an LIT. Next slide, please. Howarth Park has 3 volunteer opportunities. This is part of concessions. Now, this youngster will not be driving the train, but he will learn how the train operates, learn how to get the train running properly, help take tickets, etc. Also part of the concessions, next slide, please, is taking tickets, learning some accounting skills, learning customer service skills, learning how to properly, safely, and effectively handle money. Next slide, please. And then we also have Howarth Boathouse, and the Howarth Boathouse is helping people in and out of boats, pulling boats in and out of the water, everything we need to do to keep the boathouse in Howarth Park running well. And one of my ideas that I'm really hoping I can get going in summer 2022 is the Howarth Boathouse lifeguard, junior lifeguard position. I would love to expand that and add that for people who want open water skills, etc. Next slide, please. Finally, in Howarth Park, we have the Howarth Animal Barn, where they get to learn all the fun stuff about taking care of animals and all the non-fun stuff about cleaning up after animals. A very fun, very popular program that we have, and it gets a lot of applicants for that one as well. Next slide, please. So some challenges with work experience under COVID. I think that the number one was the regular programming was canceled. We just couldn't pull off a virtual, we didn't know how to limit it. We didn't know how to pull off a virtual training without being able to be in person. And that part of what the kids love about being in work experience is the connection they make with the staff as they're going through the process of becoming a CIT or a junior lifeguard, etc. So what we did, because we knew we relied on the volunteers so much, is we recruited 31 veteran volunteers who had worked for us before, who knew city policies, who had already been trained 1 or 2 different summers, and we used them. So our ratio, instead of having 4 CITs in a group, would be 1, and sometimes none. But we were able to use veteran volunteers, and it did work. They only worked at Summer Days programs, Summer Days Steele, Summer Days Wa-Tam, and though it's not there, Summer Days UG has them this summer as well. And they were working hard. It was Monday through Thursday for 4 10-hour days. So they're really working hard, but luckily they all had a 3-day weekend to recover and get ready for the next week. We also did not charge a program fee under COVID, and they were not charged for uniform needs or sweatshirt. And we're really got our finger crossed, and we're hopeful and we're confident that it'll be back in 2022. Next slide, please. Program challenges work experience. Number one was frustrated parents and former campers who were excited for the regular program. We did have some kids age out of the program, which is a real bummer. We were able to hire 6 staff from our work experience program who worked for us last year, though, as volunteers. So that was a little bit rewarding and took some of the sting away. Running camps with reduced supervision and had a much greater strain on staff. But I do want to point out one small item where it did kind of help. The staff last year and this year really do now appreciate how helpful those CITs are now. And I think it's created a much greater appreciation for them. So that's something we definitely are glad that happened. And then of course, dealing with COVID exposures with participants and staff. Next slide, please. Additional challenges with work experience in camps, as we mentioned before, displaced citizens, funding the ever increasing minimum wage, climate change. The heat that we're encountering is brutal right now and running all of our programs. Some ways we've combated it. The heat that we've been dealing with is instead of hiking to Spring Lake, we will bus them if the days are over 98 degrees. We've even brought the kids into air-conditioned buildings that are open on really hot days, because we know there's a huge daycare component in camps that parents need care, quality care for their kids. And then again, aging infrastructure. Next slide, please. Finally, we feel like we're doing a good job from the surveys that we put out on our work experience program. We had 100% said there's team benefit in some way from our program and would recommend to another family, and really good rates on their judgment of the program. Was it good or excellent? Over 99% said that. And even the registration, which I wanted to give just a shout out to our front desk staff. We have 350 teams registering for a program and over 2,000 campers, and you have 97% of the people rating their registration experience as good or great. We feel pretty good about that. And then the final one I'm very proud of, which is 99% are saying they enjoyed the program. Next slide, please. That's my presentation on work experience in camps. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Big. I'll open it up to the board for comments and questions. Raise an icon or raise a hand. And Pamela?
Just a quick comment. I think I said this a year ago when we heard a presentation about this, that I feel like the work experience is really great design, the way you do that. My oldest daughter was a CIT for several years at Haworth Park, and I was always very impressed by not only what she did in the program, but the preparation and training that you put into it and the things she gained from it were really so useful and made her feel very confident. And so I just wanted to say kudos to the way it's handled. It really, I think it benefits so many youth, obviously, by having that as part of the program.
Thank you for your kind words.
Anyone else? Stephen? Excuse me, Logan.
Thank you, Carol. I had 2 questions. I think first one to Richard and the second one might be Jeff. Richard, the work experience program does sound great. I'm glad to hear Pamela's daughter got some value out of it. I am curious though, the $100 fee, are there any income waivers for that or any sort of help we can do for folks who can't afford that?
Jeff might be able to better answer this, but we do have a program where they only pay $10 and then they can be part of the program as well. We do have scholarships available to people as well.
Okay. Is it easy for them to apply for that, or are they told that that's available? You know?
We are constantly communicating when people reach out. I don't think we push it out as well as we could maybe, but we definitely, when we get asked, we know where to send them and how to help them get the support they need.
Not trying to blow up your budget. I'm sure that does
No, I
contribute.
To add to that
Okay.
just a little bit, the other program that Mr. Big was referring to is through our neighborhood services. It's our Recreation Sensation, which is another summer camp that wasn't included in the presentation. And that's through Measure O funding with the neighborhood services programs. And so they also have, I think they call them LITs there. I think that's still leaders in training. And so the participants through that program, just as the participants in those camps pay reduced fees for those camps, the participants and the work experience to that one do as well.
Great. I'll make sure to call you Mr. Big next time. So, and then Jeff, this is a question for you. Mayor Rogers had a close to home column a few weeks ago on the importance of childcare. It's one of his top priorities, and the council just allocated some money in the budget towards that in recreation programs. Have you or anyone else in your department had a chance to start looking at that direction?
I know one of the funding sources, and obviously new to the interim position, but I know one of the things that I'm already working on is finalizing some contracts through 4Cs who have received money through some of the council actions. And they're getting put in place now. It's gonna be too late for this summer, but they'll be in place for a number of, it's by location. So a number of locations where we offer programs where we will be able to partner with them through their grant program to fund kids to attend some of these programs.
That's great. I'd love an update on that down the road a little bit when you have more information, please. That's it, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Steve?
Yes, let me add my congratulations also. Richard, you mentioned a few challenges that the program has, such as aging infrastructure. Could you give us prioritize a couple of them? What's your biggest challenge, second biggest challenge?
Well, I would argue the biggest challenge for us in camps, infrastructure wise, is some of our infrastructure is becoming dilapidated, like our archery range. And now that we're separate from parks and maintenance, it's much more difficult to get things done. And we're trying to look at new ways to get things done. And then I think I mentioned before, the clubhouse for Doyle Adventure Camp is in badly need of repair. Like I said, a big crack through the middle of it, cracked windows, things like that. So if I was to prioritize them, I think it would probably be the Doyle Clubhouse, just because we want to keep that open. It's a great childcare option for parents, and it is a great place for kids to be, and employs a lot of people. And if we can't keep that building going, then we're going to lose a place for a camp. It serves over 400 kids a year.
So your biggest challenge is infrastructure.
Yes, the biggest challenge of infrastructure would probably be the Doyle building, or getting things done that we need. For example, Wa-Tam, the pea gravel washes out every year, and now we're going to have to find new ways to get those done, to get new gravel put in, or to get the poison oak trimmed back, the trees trimmed so that they're safe for people to be around, etc.
So do you have plans to expand the program? And if so, how can we help?
Well, I'm guessing that the biggest way that can help would be budget increases in the new sites. In 2008, like I said, I've been around for a while. In 2008, we had started working on making Youth Park the Howarth of the West, and we were going to put in hay bale rides and water infrastructure. We were going to have an overnight camp there. And then the recession hit, so we lost our funding for that, and that dream went away. And then in Nagasawa Park, we were also contemplating putting a Wa-Tam light camp there, but we don't have the funds and don't get the approval. I think there's a demand for those kind of camps. I think the city runs them better than everywhere else. So says the staff that comes from everywhere else when we hire them. And I think that we could fulfill a huge demand for daycare and fun for kids and somewhere to be in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pamela?
I just feel like I have been hearing this over and over again about infrastructure not being kept up and maintenance being needed in our parks. And I just wanted to say, here's another example of maybe we need to be more vocal about making sure we have enough staffing and enough resources to make our parks stay in good condition. And if we can do that, then we can alleviate, it'll better enable us to offer these high quality programs in the future. But I feel like all week long, that's what I kept hearing from people in the public, and I'm hearing it from you. And so perhaps that's something we need to bang the drum about some more.
Thank you, Pamela. Terry or Carolina? Terry?
Thank you, Ryan, for the presentation. Like Pamela, I have a child who went from camp participant for several years through CIT for several years to counselor, and the program is invaluable, in my opinion. It certainly helped prepare my child for the working world to the degree that he uses a lot of the skills he learned very young as a CIT in his profession today. So I'm a big supporter of that program, and I'm hoping that it will continue in 2022 to a large degree as it did in the past. Can you talk a little bit about the impacts of the change in the minimum wage and how that specifically impacts this program?
Well, I think the easiest way is just to look at it from a math standpoint. Is if I have a certain budget for my staff for the summer and I can't go over it, then I can't offer that extra week of camp should the Santa Rosa City school schedule allow me to. It also impacts me if I want to try and open a Thanksgiving week camp. I don't have the money, I don't have the budget to actually pay staff to run that program during a week like that.
Okay. So it's a budgeting issue more than anything.
Yeah. It would be just having more money to buy the more supplies, to pay the more staff, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Carolina?
I'm so glad to see you again. You were here last year, Mr. Big, and we're dazzled always by your presentation. It's wonderful. What I'd really like to know, if there's a way of our local businesses who may need or would like to hire a young person once they've been through one series with you, do they know how can we get local folks to know that you've got trained young people that they could hire?
I think that's a great question. I think most of the CITs, the way it works is the campers come through our program, and they look up to the CITs and they can't wait to be a CIT or a volunteer in a different area. And then those volunteers want to be paid staff. So most of the CITs are actually coming into our own programs or going into recreation areas. I think you're bringing a great point. There's no reason we can't expand it and add a business module or a module that could support other types of employment in our city. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, if you, maybe you and I could talk about that offline. Because there are some programs from business groups that maybe we could match up. I'll look you up. I'll find you, Mr. Big. Great.
I'll chime in if you guys are done and say, Mr. Big, I've had enough time to do the math. Oh no, Steve, excuse me.
No, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did have one more question for Richard. Is it easy to get volunteers?
Yes, it's very easy. The biggest struggle I have to get the volunteers is when they want to come into the summer after we've already trained and gone through the process. There's some disappointment, and I wish I would have known about it, because the process starts in March and it's actually a real process. We want them to learn how to do the application and the interview, etc. And just bringing in one CIT or one other volunteer in June or July, it just compounds the work to where it's really not doable. And not only that, we have enough volunteers. When we get up to 300, 330, we have enough to fully volunteer all of the rec parks and rec programs that we do. And if we think about some of the comments made earlier, if we start expanding that and look at a business module or some other module, I'm not as comfortable with it yet, but it doesn't mean I can't learn about it. And we could expand the program in that way.
What about getting folks to help staff?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
I mean, do you need people to help support the staff that,
No, it's more of a timeline type of situation of we can't, to coordinate 330 interviews and read 330 applications and then properly place them. That's where it gets challenging. And once the summer starts, we really don't need that many more volunteers. So for a greater need for demand of volunteers to go up, we need more parks for more programs or camps or pools, etc.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Big,
Yes.
I got to do the math. I think the first time I met you was 1989. I usually have at least one clipboard with me, and this one is Sugar's. So Sugar and Buffy, say hello.
Please tell Jessica I said hi.
I will. She's in San Francisco.
Wonderful.
It amazes me how your program also shifts and bends and rises to the occasion. I've listened to Jeff put on the hats that COVID has forced that area of rec to put on. I haven't bothered to think about how it affected the young staff, the CITs, the kids who love this program. And I think those kids go from 5 years old, probably through late 20s, possibly early 30s, possibly even to your age.
We don't need to talk about that, yeah.
And how incredibly important it is. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I certainly hope that 2022 sees a return to normalcy. There's a possibility it won't, and you'll just continue to wing it. But you guys will be able to re-up your energy, and I assume the kids, the CITs, and the of age true camp counselors will be there, although you've got a time lag. If you've only had 20%, you're going to have to do some fancy dancing to potentially fully staff again, but I know you can do it. I'm wondering if you can recall how staff was able to get Uchi across the finish line. At first there was just Wa-Tam, there were way too many kids. How long did it take to bring that second little sister, little brother camp online? And could it be used as a model to potentially get a third site?
Yeah, so like I said, 1996, when we came up with the idea of starting the Howarth Park, they moved me as the camp director over there for the first 2 years. It was pretty a novel idea, and it did pretty well. With some of the crime issues that the park was running into, some of the people that would use the bathrooms for things that the bathrooms weren't being used for, that I think that kind of hurt our enrollment for a few years. And now I think we're really, well, once we changed the hours so that we weren't there on an overnight, and once we found what the need was on that side of town, it's really started to explode. And I gotta be honest, a new housing development went up in the last year, and it's providing another 10 or 12 campers who just walk over and walk home every day. So I think there's that need, and you got to have demand, but I think there is demand if we just figure out where it is.
So we're talking about Camp Uchi here at Youth Park, correct? Across from
Correct.
High School. Did you have to put in any additional infrastructure specifically to boot up Camp Uchi? Or did you just work with an existing site?
No, we had a pretty nice budget. We put in an amphitheater, a beautiful flagpole, which was destroyed. We put in gazebos. We put in an archery range. And so we were able to put in all those things. And those are very attractive. Parents still find it hard to believe that a city camp can offer canoeing or archery. And we do, because we train the staff and it's very safe, and we train the kids. And so, yeah, those types of amenities really helped attract people to come to Camp Uchi.
So I know you always have your eyes open looking for another site, preferably in another quadrant in Santa Rosa. I'd love to help you spin the money out of straw that it would take, but hopefully you are constantly on the lookout, and we can encourage our city council people that this is a very important part of the city's future, the youth.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, this isn't the reason why we do it, but they need to know it generates revenue as well. They make good money, and I've got 10 more years in both teaching and Parks and Rec, and a dream of mine is to get one more camp up, hopefully at Nagasawa or somewhere before I hang it up, and get it rocking and rolling, and then find someone to take it over from me.
Thank you, Mr. Big. Any final questions directly for Mr. Big from the board? Then we will open it up to public comments. Is anyone in the public waiting to address item 7.1?
Yes, I have one speaker. Minaj, I've enabled your speaking permissions. Please state your full name for the record if you so choose, and offer your question or comment.
Yeah, hello, this is Manoj Singh. We are looking for a cricket ground here in Santa Rosa. We are a very small community living here. We need a cricket ground because this helps us to stay connected, being a minority in this community, and also it will bring a lot of interest to this area. We have kids who want to play as well, and they don't get those chances. We have to travel far distance, going to Marin County or Napa County, and even though they have great players over there, we don't get a chance to play. Cricket becoming a very popular game now in the US. There is a US cricket team. Every county in the California is now having a ground. So Sonoma County is lacking, and we want your help to identify the ground and make a pitch. And that ground can be used for other activities as well. When we play it, like during the weekends or practice, that ground will be occupied, but then can be used for any other activities as well. And I think this is my small pitch for now, but if I get a chance, we will like to present very detailed how it will impact the culture around, how it will bring more engineers and doctors all across the from California to Sonoma County, and how that will also increase the budget for the county, because all of our immigrants, basically engineers and doctors, working all along over here in Sonoma County, helping to build our county, and we want your help to get this sport for our community. This cricket is played by immigrants or immigrants of first generation, second generation from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, England, Australia, New Zealand, Kenya, many other countries. Immigrants play these sports, and now it's becoming very popular. This will give us a chance for our kids and for our country to play this game in the future and be competitive. The dream is to make sure that our kids can get that chance and play for USA Cricket, and also represent in the future internationally. For that, we just need a ground, and we are happy to help in any way possible as a community in Sonoma County. And I think that's my small pitch for now.
Thank you, Manoj. I will include your comments in item 3, which was non-agenda items. And is there anyone else that has a question or comment regarding item 7.1? Chair Quant, I see no hands at this time.
Thank you. We will move on to item 8 then, which is the committee reports. And I have the pleasure of reporting both on the mayor's lunch and on the waterways committee. Before I talk about the mayor's lunch, I wanted to mention we haven't had a regular meeting for a couple of months. 2 maintenance positions were brought back into the city budget. I will toot her horn courtesy of City Council member Victoria Fleming, who didn't ask. Jeff, I'm going to step outside my bounds really quickly here, but she was able to get funding for 2 maintenance positions and the snack bar at Ridgeway funded for 1 year. Park and Rec was asked to take the same level of staff hit as the rest of the departments. Council member Schwedhelm requested that the police not be cut as severely. Much discussion took place. 9 positions, I think, were refunded for the year in the police, and 2 maintenance positions were refunded for Park and Rec. A number of staff people let me know that there was almost a bounce to some steps in Park and Rec after those 2 positions came off the chopping block. And as appointees to city council members, we're in a marvelous position to remind our city council people how incredibly important Parks and Rec are to all of the citizens of Santa Rosa. And that my hope is that Park and Rec people are the face of City of Santa Rosa employees, not the police, not the fire department, but Park and Rec. Good things. So kudos, and very glad that those staff positions came back. Parks are important, and parks make life better. Having said that, I also want to commend everyone who was at the special meeting last week where we helped move Roseland Creek Park forward. There is an 1117 map waiting for you at the front desk at Finley Center, which will also make a lovely placemat at your kitchen table after you've used it. I've already told Victoria Fleming she's going with me, and then I will give it to her and that she can show it to the rest of City Council. I know that Chris Rogers has been out there. Thank you very much, Logan. I don't know if any other City Council have been out to Roseland Creek, but please, if you report or have a relationship with your City Council person, get them out there. It's not supposed to go to City Council, I think, until September, but it's really important that all of City Council have firsthand experience with this new park, that it be more than just a PowerPoint presentation. And we are in a position to make that happen without violating the Brown Act. Also, staff is in a position to make that happen if we cannot. So let's really encourage our City Council people to invest some time in Roseland Creek, but more importantly, in the parks and the rec program as a whole. Public service announcement over. Mayor's lunch. There are a number of housing projects in the works all over town, which will bring in more kids. I don't know if there are any more parks that are going to happen before these buildings go up, because you see them going up. So the parks are going to be used by more kids. These are multi-story, fairly medium to high density units that are not going to have backyards. The play structures at best will be minimum. another good reason to have parks. The mayor said something about some funding that may be coming into place where students and people of low income can have income supplements with special funding. Logan, you may know more about this than I do. It was something that was potentially in the works for Santa Rosa. And he came right out and said, yes, this could definitely benefit our parks program. Logan, do you know anything about this?
That might have been what I was asking Jeff about earlier. I know the mayor's also interested in a universal basic income program that would be targeted at, I think it was single moms was the first population, but I don't know if, I'm not sure if that made it into the budget direction or not, but I know that's being explored.
Thank you. Pamela?
That discussion was around the American Rescue Act funding, and that's where that was coming from. So like one-time funding.
Thank you. Moving forward to the Waterways Committee, we did have a meeting that was addressing a project called Stony Point Flats, which is over at the corner of Old Stony Point Road, where the expressway, the Business Park Expressway goes through. There's growth that's going to happen in the Southwest. That area is slated for a lot of much needed housing, which happens to be where Roseland Creek Park is going in. So yeah, it's very interesting serving on that committee to see how everything interacts. And I assume that the Waterways Committee will also have input on Roseland Creek, which runs through, as we all remember from last week, Roseland Creek Park. Any questions about any of that? Great. We move on to written and electronic communications. Do we have anything, Jeff?
Sorry, I missed that was on me. I believe we did. Is that to report the? Is that for, I'm sorry, is that for written comments submitted in from the public?
So sorry to catch you flat-footed. We definitely have the Zest newsletter, which we got as both a PDF and I got one in the mail. Did everybody get that in the mail? Great. I don't know if there was anything else.
Oh, yeah, so ours going to the public. Yeah, Zest newsletter went out, which for those not aware is for senior programs and updates. So we have, as part of the reopening, Steel Lane and the Person Senioring Care at Finley have had programs coming back, a very gradual resumption of programs and figuring out how to do this with COVID. So that went out, and that is the only one listed under those electronic communications.
And Carol, may I please interrupt for a moment? I believe early on we covered the upcoming and accomplished events, but I believe we skipped over item 6. And I'm wondering if we could circle back with director updates.
My apologies. That would go back to you, Jeff.
I was going to let it slide. One less responsibility for me today. The only update I really have, which you spoke on already, is Kelly Magnuson's retirement, and just thank you for your kind words on behalf of the board, but on behalf of the city. I know Kelly is off enjoying her life of retirement already. I believe she's playing tennis right now based off of what she told me her plans are and seeing the clock right now. But it's 24 years of service, not just to recreation and parks, but to the city in the roles that she played. And a lasting legacy of contributions that she made for us, leading us through some incredibly difficult times between recessions and fires and different things. So very big shoes to fill, and certainly not going to be filled by me alone in an interim role. But fortunately, as you guys have seen through Mr. Big's presentation and numerous presentations over the last month, a team that Kelly has built and groomed and mentored to step up and continue on that legacy. So Kelly, if you see this, I know you're not watching it live, but if you see it at some point, thank you very much for everything that you've done for the city, for recreation and parks, for me personally as a mentor. And we intend to do our best to make you proud, Kelly. So thank you. And that's the only update I have, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Jeff? Seeing none, we will move on to future agenda items. Anybody? Steve?
Yes, we had 3 folks commenting in the public comment section. Are any of those 3 or all 3 of those something we would like to discuss in the future?
So that would be pickleball, petanca, and cricket. Are those 3 items you're referencing?
Yes.
Jeff, do you know if any of those are currently in discussion with other areas of staff?
I'm not sure. Pickleball is, I'm sure you're all aware, pickleball and tennis courts and space for that has been an ongoing conversation for quite a while. I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong because I was actually pulling stuff on Google as the gentleman was speaking out. Petanca, I believe it was referred as how to pronounce it. And then cricket, I'm not aware of previous conversations on that, or if the people who spoke today or those groups have been involved in any of the outreach. If so, then that data will be collected with the outreach for the Measure M Parks for All.
Perhaps there could be a future agenda item that discussed expanding into previously unexplored physical fields such as petanca and cricket, and have a more general rather than a sport specific. Would that interest the board?
That was going to be my suggestion, Carol, if I could.
Oh.
I was going to say maybe we could get an update on the athletic facilities, just kind of a overview of what we have and maybe what folks might be interested in or what exists now. I think that'd be helpful.
Pamela?
Yeah, when I attended a recent city council meeting, I know council member Natalie Rogers, repeatedly asked for more sports fields in Santa Rosa as well. And that's something that's come up in my years on this board many times, the need for sports fields. So I think it is a really good overall topic to discuss and evaluate. First of all, how much use is each of these specially designed athletic sports features being used, and where's the demand that's not being met?
Logan, your hand appears raised. Did you have another comment? Okay.
No, sorry about that, Carol. Let me lower that.
I had the interesting pleasure of attending the English as a Second Language Measure M Zoom meeting, which was back in June, and being on the second channel was very educational for me. The participants in large part were all from a soccer club, and they, one and all, were interested in artificial turf fields. Jen was trying to be responsive and answer questions. I had to prod her into telling them that converting or creating an artificial lit one single soccer field ran about $1.25 million. The air was taken out of the room. Participants could not figure out how that could happen, how it could cost that much money. Couldn't we just get volunteers to do it? But that was for one field. we need a dozen. The demand is so great. The need is so great. And Measure M money, a year's worth of Measure M money would get you one field and then some pocket change. It's hard to do these big projects, in my opinion, given our current fiscal restraints.
I think this is why Councilmember Rogers was speaking of it in the context of the American Rescue Plan funding. Could some of the American Rescue Plan funding be used for this need in the community?
Excellent question. I don't know if that's an agenda item or we could have staff look into it and get back to us on that. Any other potential future items, Steve?
Yes, many, if not most, California city councils, boards, commissions have a regular agenda item immediately before adjournment. For example, for us, it would be board member comments, where any board could talk about anything they wanted, but typically it's an event they went to, something they supported, promoting a Parks and Rec event or something like that. I was wondering if this board would be interested in adding such an item to our regular agenda.
So I have thought about that a lot and wanted to bring that up when we got back to real life. I keep thinking we're going to get back to real life any day now. I'm kind of giving up on it. My thought was that would be a wonderful thing to add when we are doing roll call. And it's events. I think it would be wonderful if we made a point of attending an event, especially if it was in our district, now that we all have districts as well as the entire city. I also wanted to suggest each of us take on the exciting opportunity of visiting a park a month. And you say, I went to, and 1 month it's a park in your district, and the next month it's a park not in your district. This is something that I would love to have an agenda item about, which rolls over into a future agenda item, which is discussing how this board can be more than simply a once a month review of staff presentations and occasionally getting to weigh in on parks, that we truly become more proactive, an extension that residents of the city can reach out to, that we literally expose ourselves almost not as electeds, but as representatives who can get people information. Staff does not have a lot of time, and I've been doing this a little bit this week. I can tell you it's really frustrating, and it's also really rewarding because, frankly, staff just does not have the time, and there are communication breakdowns which we can help discover and also address. On that note, I'm going to ask that James Castro be an invited guest to hopefully our next board meeting. James Castro is the new superintendent of park maintenance. And I had the pleasure of talking to him for about 20 minutes. And he is also very interested in getting the communication between the Parks Department and the citizens of Santa Rosa streamlined, that there's been an awful lot of potholes in that, which leads to frustration and giving parks a bad name. So that's an awful lot, but it all has to do with communication, our stepping up to the plate, our being way more than people who meet once a month for an hour and a half. Terry.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, Carol, and inviting James Castro to talk with us. One of the things that I've really struggled with are, and I'm sure we all experience this, are complaints on Nextdoor, for example, and whether or not we should chime in and to what degree and how to best pass that information along to staff to the extent that they're not seeing it. So having that conversation with James Castro would be really helpful for me personally, and I'm sure for others as well.
Carol. You're
Go
on
ahead.
mute.
Go ahead, Carolina, excuse me.
Has the city council met James Castro also?
I have no idea. I haven't met James Castro. He called me because I sent him a rather irate email about parks maintenance not getting back to members of the public.
I see. Okay. Well, I would like my council person to be able to hear and meet James Castro also. I am interested too, but it helps a whole lot if your council person has heard them also. And that's why I asked the question. Thanks.
You're welcome. Perhaps bring that up with Councilmember Sawyer.
Yeah, we talk on a regular basis, so that won't be a problem. I was just curious to know if the council had met James Castro yet.
I really don't.
Okay.
Know. Jeff?
Okay.
I'm not sure what was done with that, but I know for this agenda item, we've gone a little into discussion if we could get clarity for staff's perspective of what future agenda items we would like, if we could kind of clarify what are future agenda items that we're adding.
Thank you for that bit of cat herding, Jeff.
You're testing me on my first one. So I know there's been some talk of staff presentation from parks on communication. There's been talk of the sports field usage. There's been talk of additions to your agenda of standing items. So if we could get some clarity of what the board would like to see in future items.
You are muted, Carol.
Excuse me. Steve has his hand raised. If Jeff, will you bring us back around after Steve has asked his question or made his comment? Thank you.
You know, actually, my comment is off this subject. So it was, maybe I had some technical difficulties earlier. I just needed to know what the vote was on the approval of the May 26 meeting minutes.
There were no objections that I saw hands raised, and they were approved.
Okay, thank you.
So future agenda items. James Castro, everyone, superintendent of maintenance. He's not the head honcho, but he is head boots on the ground. We would love for him to come talk to us.
I believe
Carol, I don't mean to interrupt, but we do actually have Mr. Castro as an attendee, and we can promote him to talk if you would like.
I'm sorry?
I said that we do have Mr. Castro as an attendee, and we can promote him to talk if you would like.
I would need to check in with the board and say it's 5:30. I don't know if anybody else has plans this afternoon. We were scheduled to be done around now, I think. Is this something we would like to pursue now, or something we might want to ask Mr. Castro to come back with? Terry?
Yeah, we can't really, under the Brown Act, have a full discussion at this point. It's one thing to add the item for a future agenda, but we really can't engage with him on the topic.
And I believe a presentation from Parks, which he'll be involved with, is on the agenda within the next couple months, if not next month's agenda already is a scheduled presentation from Parks. So that will be happening soon.
Thank you. And Terry, it is always such a blessing having you and your wealth of experience to also herd these cats, me being a head meower. So James Castro for a future item, expansion of this board's opportunities and responsibilities as an agenda item.
Carol, let me weigh in there if I could. Just on the Brown Act issue, I want to bring up one thing Terry said. We do want to be careful about commenting on social media, because if we all do that as a majority of the board, that is a Brown Act violation. So generally, I'd advise folks to just not do that, because 3 other people could do it, and then that would be a violation of the Brown Act, even if we didn't coordinate that at all. So you can reach out to people directly. So that's usually the most appropriate way, as I've learned in my various ethics trainings. But just on the future agenda items, I absolutely think we should have a standing item on board comments like Steve suggested. And yes, I'd also like to hear from Mr. Castro. Thanks.
So I would prefer to have those comments, general comments about all things wonderful in Park and Rec in our lives at the beginning rather than the end of the board meeting, or right after roll call. Would that be okay?
So I think that'll be a future agenda item to have those discussions on where it would fit in the agenda.
Right. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, one of the reasons to have it at the end of the agenda is there may be some comments or some board members would like to comment on what occurred during the meeting.
And again, we can ring around that conversation when it's the agenda item in a future meeting.
So anybody else with future agenda items?
Excuse me, but there was a mention from some of the callers regarding the sports, the various sports. Did you want to bring something back for that?
I think we discussed sports fields and in general, future sports field usage rather than specifics for cricket, petanque, and pickleball.
Thank you.
I'm going to say the silence says we're done. Would anyone mind if we adjourn this meeting? Okay, then at 5:38, I would like to adjourn this meeting of the Board of Community Services. Have a wonderful end of July, beginning of August. Be safe. See you in a month.